For the past 3 years, the pandemic has been a constant topic of conversation. Additionally, it's played a huge impact on our society, and we've all had to interact with it in some way, shape, or form. You might have had it, a friend or family member might have had it, your school or workplace might have shut down because of it or implemented new policies in wake of it. In short, we've all had to interact with this illness in some way, shape, or form. And I am no different. As a college student, I've had my fair share of, I wouldn't say life-changing, but definitely semester or college career-changing experiences as a result of this new plague. And as a result, that is our conversation point tonight. Hey, what's going on, geeks? Maxusthebeast here, and welcome back to Story Time. This time, it's all about my experiences with COVID-19. I think it's only right to start at the very beginning. So, I first heard about COVID-19 in early January of 2020, when the reports of a new disease spotted in China were beginning to circulate around over here. At the time, I didn't really think too much of it. I just found it unfortunate that there was another, major disease on the playing field, but didn't really think that much of it. Because you've had plenty of disease scares over the years that didn't particularly impact the... I live in the US of A, so it didn't really impact us directly, at least. Like the Zika virus a couple years ago. Sure, that messed up the Olympics and was a pain in the keister for anybody in South America and in other territories as well. But in terms of the US cases, I don't remember Zika being the biggest talking point. So I kind of viewed this as sort of like that, an unpleasant situation for those who are impacted by it overseas, but didn't really expect it to have as much of a worldwide impact as it did. And I remember, hearing more and more about it as January went on, but didn't really think too much of it until around late February, early March of that year, when it started to spread drastically and rapidly. I remember specifically though, my college has their spring break in the first full week of March. And during that time frame, my family and I decided to take a quick week-long vacation. It was also directly after my birthday, so we were going to take a quick vacation to celebrate the birthday, just, have some time to enjoy spring break to the fullest. It was about halfway through the week when my mom was looking at her phone and noticed a headline that several local colleges rather, had shut down because of either the threat of COVID or active COVID cases on campus. Now, understand that back at this time, there was a belief that if one person had COVID, then it would jump to 70 and then the numbers would just continuously escalate. So 1 or 2 cases was all it would take to get a college to shut down because, again, we're dealing with an unknown. No one knew much about the disease at this point, so there was really no telling how severe this could be, how quickly it could spread from person to person, incubation time, that sort of a thing. The threat was entirely unknown, and people were deciding it was better to be safe than end up sorry in the long run. But my school was, at that time, not one of those on the list of those shutting down. So we were still expected to return to campus the next week. And so we did. The week went as normal. There was no difference in the air. It was just class as usual for the first 4 days back in classes. However, I believe it was on a Thursday. Yeah, it was on a Thursday because I had an English class in the morning where we were working on, it was a class specifically about detective fiction. It was a really cool class. I really enjoyed the professor, enjoyed the class. We read a lot of really interesting stuff from Sherlock Holmes to Agatha Christie and a lot of other notable detective fiction authors. It was a really fun class, and during this time we had just finished up about a week before spring break started. We had wrapped up one of the major books for the semester because, of course, being an English class, we read a lot of books and short stories and articles and whatnot. And we just finished up one of our bigger books for the semester at that time, or right before we went on break. So we were breaking up into smaller groups to discuss the book and to compare various themes of the book and talk about specific chapters. So we had separated up into small groups to do just that. Now, before we broke up into groups, I vividly remember my professor she was the first person I remember at college mentioning COVID-19. Because, of course, everyone had, of course, been paying attention to the massive influx of shutdowns. And I'm more than sure that people were asking about, well, are we next? So to try to reassure everybody, I vividly remember my professor saying that even in wake of all the recent shutdowns, she does not see our school shutting down anytime soon. After all, we're a smaller college, and the odds of the plague hitting us here are rather slim. Well, back into the small groups. One of my group members had a notification on her phone, and since she was using an e-book anyway, she was allowed to use her device to, look at the book. She tabbed over to look at the notification. It was a Facebook notification from a group of people in I think the dorm or off-campus housing or somewhere close to where she lived on campus or off campus, somewhere in the area, mentioning that the first person had gone into quarantine for COVID that day. The rest of the day went business as usual. There was nothing really new to report. Just, again, in the back of your mind, you're thinking about this one person who is allegedly quarantining. And the rumors were true. There was, in fact, one person quarantining. And because, again, the massive amount of uncertainty behind the spread and impact of the virus led to, well, the next day, we shut down. Initially, it was going to be a 2-week hiatus where we would quickly transition into offline or online classes for a bit, and then after 2 weeks was up, go back into the classroom. That never happened. The 2 weeks turned into the rest of the semester, and classes went pretty much asynchronous, effective immediately. While I know that there were some classes that transitioned better online than others, mine, well, the majority of mine turned out to be me having to self-teach myself a lot of my subjects because only 2 of my 5 instructors recorded lectures. One of them would actively post discussions and would publish long paragraphs of things to read over. So there were 3 classes that were technically active, right? 2 that did videos and 1 that would do bi-weekly updates. The other 2 went entirely to self-teaching because, on one hand, both of these professors, one of them just didn't really use Canvas a lot, so he didn't mess with that too much, and the other one didn't know how to use Canvas all that well. And also, it was a theater class. At this point, I was experimenting to see what I was interested in, so I was taking a lot of different classes. But how in the world do you do a theater class? How in the world do you do a theater class? How do you do a theater class online? The remainder of that class went into just watching a couple plays digitally and then doing a quick write-up on what we thought. There was a larger project that we had to do, but it was, again, just write stuff down. it was a bizarre transition that I didn't particularly enjoy, but I had a lot more free time because, again, you can just kind of plow through your online stuff, and then next thing you know, you're still at home, so you can just do what you want to do. It turned into an extended summer of sorts. By the fall, we were back. However, this time it was this weird hybrid system of, at the start of the semester, for each class, you were divided into two groups, Zoom and in person. And you were assigned specific days of the week that you were going to be either on Zoom or in person. It was a bizarre system to adjust to. I, for the first little bit, attended the wrong sessions. I was in class when I was supposed to be on Zoom, and on Zoom when I was supposed to be in class, but again, it was week one, so none of the professors were too upset about it because, everyone is still learning this bizarre new system.
Are you okay? Got him.
But,
Alright, good.
oh well.
Any civilian casualties you've seen?
There wasn't that much going on afterwards. It was still inconvenient, but it could have been a whole lot worse. However, I know for the professors that this was definitely also a very interesting time period for them, because the addition of Zoom and the ability to also skip class and just zoom in, that convenience was appealing to plenty of people. And my German professor compiled a list of some of his favorite excuses of why a student couldn't make it to class and was forced to zoom in. Illnesses, of course, or like family emergency or something like that were, of course, respected and valid and whatnot. But there were plenty of other ones that definitely made the list, like this. My professor's absolute favorite one was his absolute favorite excuse was, "Oh, it's raining today." Whereas previously, before Zoom was an option, were it raining, you just throw on a jacket or grab an umbrella. It's like pretty extreme weather. Yeah, I think you can still make it to class given the weather conditions, unless it's pretty extreme and you physically can't leave or whatever. However, that same professor also had a premonition. Remember one class period he said that eventually we're all going to get this thing at some point. And for me, it took quite a while. In fact, it wasn't until the start of last year where I actually had my first run-in with COVID. At the early January of 2022, my parents both got COVID. And then I experienced some mild symptoms as well, so I might have had a very mild case of it. However, the incident that I'm more fluent with, because it was more direct and it's going to actually play more of a role, because again, when COVID first hit us the first time, it was really mild cases for all parties involved. We've all been vaccinated, so there's really no concern there. It was just, we had it. It was inconvenient for a little bit, but we were all fine. And it also didn't interrupt anything else going on in life because it was still winter break. It was the first week of January. We didn't start back for a bit. I just started and we were still masking up in classes anyway, so just go back to class wearing a mask and social distance and whatnot. However, things kind of changed in the last couple weeks of August, also in 2022, where I started feeling a little bit off. Now, over the summer, another story for another time, but I did do an internship with a fair bit of it outside. When I was about, maybe 9 or 10, I went to an allergist to talk about, my plethora of allergies. We did an allergy test, and it turns out I'm allergic to like practically every tree to exist, so being outdoors, for me, I love it sometimes, but man, it can be problematic when I get close to things that drive those allergies up the wall. But that weekend, I had been at my internship. It was my last couple sessions before I would actually finish up the collegiate requirements for it, so I was almost done. I'd finished up. I was done actually. I finished my last couple of sessions, and I was just chilling out the rest of the week. But I started feeling a bit bizarre about halfway through the week. I first kind of chalked it up to allergies, but after my cough got worse, my mom was like, "Hey, maybe you should test for COVID." And at first I'm like, well, I don't think it's COVID, but I decided to test anyway to find out, and sure enough, it was. I had to work that weekend, and so I had to text some of my coworkers and say, "Hey, I'm currently sick with COVID and can't make it this weekend." And thankfully they were all cool about it, like, "Oh, no problem, just focus on getting better." But that was weird. Again, I just had your basic. I felt like I was just having like severe allergies, right? I just had a mild cough, was a bit more sinusy than usual, and that was it. So inconvenient, but wasn't awful. However, there is something that COVID is known to do, and that is to rebound after a couple weeks, and that is exactly what it did for me. A couple weeks into the semester, early September, I woke up one morning feeling like death itself. I felt awful. It was like flu-like symptoms. I had the chills. I was running, just like, I wasn't running a fever the first go-round, but I was like 101 second go-round, and that was awful. I felt awful. For those who say this whole thing's a joke, no. That was absolutely horrendous. I hated it. I had to get in contact with my college's care center, and we showed them my COVID test results.
This guy's not quite dead.
And then, get in contact with them. They sent out emails to my professors explaining the situation. And we made arrangements with my professors on like makeup work and whatnot. Thankfully, there wasn't much of anything going on that week, so I didn't miss really anything. And obviously I recovered, but my gosh, that was horrendous, and I do not want to experience that again. But again, folks, that's about it. After my recovery, I have thankfully been able to avoid COVID to the best of my abilities. I haven't gotten sick with anything else, and literally knocking on wood as we speak, I intend to be as safe as possible going forward. But that is my current experience with COVID-19, the pandemic, and all things plague-related, at least in terms of this one. Let me know in the comment section down below how COVID's impacted you if you want to share those stories. But thanks again for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed my suffering. And as always, Maxusthebeast. We'll see you all in the next one. As always, Maxusthebeast is out.